Okay. Hello.
It's 5:30, everyone.
All right. So, hello, my name is Korey Woodley, and welcome to the Pullman Police Advisory Committee. We're excited here to get started. We're glad we have a huge audience here today on YouTube. So we'll go ahead and get started with approving the meeting minutes from May 8th, 2017. I only had a chance to skim them, so I'm going to trust the rest of the committee today. And do I hear any, do we have a need for any changes on those minutes?
I move adoption of the May minutes.
I'll second. This
All
whole
right,
committee
all
over
those
here
in
will
favor?
second.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, my signature is gold. All right, we're good. So, vice chair election is something that we're gonna get right off the bat, get going right off the bat with. So we do vice chair and chair election at the same time, so we're going to do both. I am not saying I'm not willing to stay in the chair position, but if somebody else is interested in the chair position, that would be okay to come forward now to talk to me. So we need nominations for both the chair and the vice chair position. So Darby did get one email of interest, and I was wondering if anyone else here has any interest in either positions or has a nomination they would like to present.
Well, I'd present a nomination, but before I do so, I'd like to know who had interest,
Okay, so.
because that seems like a good choice.
Right. So Charlene did have interest in the vice chair position?
Okay. Well, Korey, you had previously indicated willingness to accept nomination as chair again if there were a vice chair who had time, and particularly in the short run, to be helpful. And presumably Charlene would not have volunteered had she not had time to do that. So I would like to enter a nomination of Korey Woodley as chairperson and Charlene Jasper as vice chair.
Thank you. Do we hear?
Do you second? Do you? I mean, I'm all
Sure, we can have, since we have a motion, we can have a second and vote on it if you guys are willing and don't see a need for further discussion.
I'd like to ask Eric if he would be interested in serving as vice chair.
I would say it comes, I'm willing to, I'd say it comes down to who has the most time. Because business does keep me pretty busy. And so it just depends on, so I'd be willing to serve as vice chair, but I also, it just depends on who has the most time. I don't know. Most qualified.
Well, if we're going to talk qualified, well, that'll be a different story. Do you want us to go out in the hallway?
But you just, I don't know, so.
Yeah.
Just
So, before we go any further, I'm looking at our guidelines, and on nominations, it talks about having an election on a September meeting.
Unless there's a resignation.
Right, so so for the vice chair position, and I think we're okay on that, but as in the chair position, I don't think we need to act on that until September.
Okay, so I had asked Arlene if they typically did it that way, but I should have double checked in our bylaws. Or
now, as far as the chair, wasn't that just every 3 years, or?
I thought so.
yeah, there is a time period, but Arlene did take it again. From what I read, she had been on it for 6 years in her last term, I believe, but she had been on it before. she had gone on it back and forth. Darby, I mean, Chief Jenkins, do you know how long her term was?
Pretty much,
I don't
Yeah.
remember.
because she
'Cause
was
she-
willing.
And she switched position a couple of times where she went from vice chair to chair and then rotated back in and
Yeah,
served a
and-
couple terms.
And it does say that the elections for the committee officers shall occur in years with the last two digits are divisible by 3, which would put it at 2018 for the next, at least chair, since that position's filled. So
Okay,
I would recommend that we go with that. Since the vice chair position is vacant, then we would nominate and elect for that, and
Okay.
then it would get back on the regular schedule after that.
perfect.
So I withdraw my motion.
Okay. Apparently I'm still chair. Whoever's vice chair has to live with me. You'll get over it.
Well,
Okay.
Eric has more experience than I do. I just came forward. I do feel like I have some time, but I have a lot to learn, so.
So do I
You
hear?
have more time.
Well, you know, I'm an old lady and I'm tired.
Yeah.
Always looking for something to get into trouble doing, so.
Yeah.
No, but it's really, I'm open. It's either way, I just thought I would help out.
Yeah.
Is there anything in there, so if we have 2 nominees, we would have an election?
I didn't nominate Eric, and he
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
sound too enthused, so
Well, it's just funny that
I was,
Eric and
just an
Charlene both
inquiry.
came up because I was like, I'm gonna nominate either both of them or either of them if I'm out of here, so it's just, it's funny. I have them both marked here, so.
How good are you at ideas? Like my feeling from
Oh, I'm full of them.
How good are you?
my feeling from myself is that I'm more
I
of
feel like I should
a
have taken this off.
what's there to
YouTube at
do,
some
let's
point.
get it done, as opposed to like, oh, we could do all these things, you know, right? So I'm not really, that's one thing I don't know. It's not like I'm such an idea, like, let's do all these, like, yeah, we could do this, we could do that, you know?
Yeah.
It's more like, okay, what's there to get done, let's get it done, you know?
Right.
So,
Well, what I really need is, well, I might as well announce it. Did I announce it to everyone that I'm pregnant? And we are expecting in November. So I need from a vice chair support in being able to run meetings, especially a couple of meetings when I'm going to be October, November time period when I'm not going to be probably in being able to run the meetings. So doing that, having ideas on themes. I've been brainstorming themes. That's another thing I wanted to bring up today. Helping out with Lentil Festival. It's not overly time consuming. We should be recording what we're doing so that we can contribute more to the annual report version of what's going on in our committee, but that's really just going through our minutes and synthesizing what have we done this last year and what can we do in the future and that kind of thing. So,
you're able to be here pretty regularly too. Okay.
And
so we could ask for nominations again. Something tells me we'll have 2 nominations, so.
Well, I'm happy to nominate Charlene again.
I'm fine with letting her do it.
thanks.
then I'm not gonna nominate Eric. so-
Oh, well, I guess then we're just. I'm not going to ask you to leave the room since this is on YouTube. So all those in favor and
And
Charlene?
also, just so that
Oh, yeah,
everyone
we need a
knows,
motion.
on elections of committee members, alternates can also vote even if the primary is here.
Yes. I should have mentioned that.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief. So did I heard a motion. No, I didn't hear a
A
motion.
nomination.
I heard a nomination. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All those in favor of Charlene being our vice chair?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
That's why you're supposed to stand in the hallway. Thank you. Thank you.
You should have just screamed. Hi. Well, thank you so much for stepping up for this position. It really means a lot to have the support, and I really appreciate all of you and all of your support on this committee. So thank you for your time and being here. I'm really excited to see where we go and what kind of new things that we can do together. All right, so we have Lentil Festival on here, and Darby did mean to bring the trifold, but It turns out that somebody else has the trifold
Someone
book
borrowed
today, so we will not get to see the trifold in its full glory. Some of us may remember what's on there and have some suggestions of what kind of materials we should put together beforehand anyway, so we can talk about that. And then another thing I wanted to talk about in addition to the Lentil Festival was going on to our future meetings again. So we've had this ongoing thing probably the last 6 months where we've had themes or we've hosted other events. Some of our themes have like fire awareness, fire, we did the university, we did code, we've done some other things. And I was wondering if there's anything else that comes to mind. I have one idea is to invite either a director or whatever they call the director of Greek affairs at WSU to talk to us about safety when it comes to fraternity and sorority as another idea for a theme that we can have at a future meeting. But if there's any other ideas, I'd love to hear them now so we can get these planned out and get some contacts arranged.
What about WSU police chief, just to connect with them? Normally we do connect with WSU once a year, but I don't know that we have recently.
Are you referring to the...
Police department.
Oh, the police department. Yes, we had somebody here from the university.
Did we?
Yeah.
Mike Larson.
Yes. Yep. And that's something, some of these various themes, we've thought maybe we could do these annually, like have people come here from like a fire department or the university, because there's always new relevant, pertinent information going on that would be useful for us to know and for community members to know. Maybe we want to hear some of the same information again so new people can come in and hear this information. So any other ideas that people are interested in hearing about when it comes to anything related to safety, community, anything that you think is relevant to the police department community interaction in that interface?
Just some ideas that you might want to consider is maybe some of the equipment that we carry might be helpful to hear about how they work and some of the reasoning behind us using them and how we train with them. For example, our the taser weapon. I know sometimes there's controversy about that weapon, and there's some misinformation about what it actually does or can do, and so that might be a topic. Another one could be the weapon that we phased out, that we replaced our phased out beanbag shotguns with. It's called a 40 millimeter impact weapon that is superior to what the beanbag shotgun was. That might be an interesting topic. Even having one of our weaponless defense instructors come in and talk about defensive tactics that we train our officers and what we train them and why. Somebody maybe to come in and talk about our field training officer program and how we train our officers when we get them fresh out of the academy.
I've been following a bit, and I don't understand all of it, but I'd like to hear a little more about the Pullman welcoming community debate and what has happened there and so on. I know you were interviewed about it the other day.
I can update you on that tonight because council voted on it last council meeting.
These are all great ideas, Chief Jenkins, thank you. Do any of those stand out as something you guys want to do earlier or later? Does something stand out?
Gosh, I think they all sound terrific.
Yeah.
I'd really like to have some more in-depth information about marijuana,
Okay.
about how we're handling it with our students, and if you're working somewhere where they do drug testing, how they're handling that, if they've come to terms with what the levels are going to be. So I would, I think that maybe that would be an interesting topic too to get into a little more depth on.
Sure.
When you own rentals, it's kind of interesting.
Right, and that really was a significant impact with the marijuana law, because previously it would be a police issue. Now it's no longer a police issue. It's a landlord-tenant issue.
And, some people kind of still care and some really don't care at all. Come on in.
I don't know who would be arranging these, but I actually know the professor in chemistry who's heading up sort of the, it's not really a breathalyzer for marijuana, but that sort of project. So if anyone needs a point of contact, I could.
Is that Brian Clowers?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually working with them.
Oh, awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you in chemistry?
I'm not. I'm actually in psychology, but I did just publish something on cannabis use,
Oh.
so sort of my research field, sort of.
What was the topic of your?
So I worked with Carrie Cutler and Ryan McLaughlin, who I think were both at the research summit in Spokane, but we got to stress out a bunch of cannabis users and then show that they actually don't have like a physiological stress reaction to what was objectively incredibly stressful. So that was pretty interesting. But
Oh, okay, and so they did a presentation at that up in Spokane, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Is there
sort of
anything in
my
the
research
bylaws
field.
about having committee members present? That would be
I
interesting.
noticed like that's sort of my field.
Okay, well,
Has the committee ever toured the
so I think that we should get some of these picked to get on the schedule.
I think like Jenkins mentioned, finding out about like taser and some of those things is cool.
Yes,
You know.
yes. And is that something you could do for us, or do you have someone?
I would have one of our taser instructors do that.
Okay, so can we contact them about getting them on one of our?
Yeah, so if you want, what I would suggest is if you want to put together a list and then the dates that you want for each topic, and then we'll start arranging the presenters.
Okay, so should we?
But one other possible suggestion too is I don't know how many of the committee members have actually been through the police facility, but we could do a police facility tour one time as well.
Is there a limit to how many people we could have, or is that just, you mean just committee members?
Right.
Okay.
Well, and if we had some audience here, they could go with us too.
Okay. Yeah, that would be really
Our
interesting.
large audience.
Yeah.
Could it fit into a session, one of our evening sessions?
Yes. Yep.
That would be nice to get out of here. We should do that this summer, right, guys?
Outside
Field
meetings.
trip?
No following with the cameras in that one. So police facilities tour. We could do that at the next meeting, maybe see if we can get someone to come and talk about the tasers. Who is the person who's the trainer that you have?
We have a couple, but if you just want to let me know when you want to do what, we'll get them set up.
Would that be in conjunction with the tour?
Could we do that in conjunction with the tour?
I would say that might be too much for one
Okay,
meeting.
that's what I was wondering.
Okay. All right, so maybe we should do that. Would it be too late to do the police facilities tour the next meeting?
No.
You could look at the display board where it lives, at least.
Or where it should be.
Where it's supposed to
Because
live.
it's gonna be July, and that's gonna be the perfect time to,
So basically, next meeting, what we gotta handle is Lentil Festival, and if we.
yeah, let's do the Lentil Festival next meeting, and then do the police facilities tour the next meeting. And then,
You mean July?
August.
yeah, the same meeting.
The same meeting, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
July.
Yeah.
And then in August, we can see if we can get one of the trainers to come talk to us about the equipment. And for the August meeting, so,
The Greek person in September.
yes, and in September,
Say how
well,
things are.
yeah, we would like to, I think it would be interesting to have the director, or not sure what their title is at the university. Director of Greek Affairs, come talk to us about their safety concerns and the things that they deal with on campus and things that we can do as a community to better work with them.
It might also be interesting, I know the new ASWSU Vice President and President are doing the It's on Cougs campaign against sexual assault and sexual violence. That might be something, potentially even in the same meeting, to
Yeah.
lump it into like student issues. I don't know.
I'm writing that one down.
What, that's September, right?
Yeah, September.
Because once other people are back.
I think that would be good for when the students are back, yeah, because,
September's gonna be a big football month.
Yeah.
Oh,
horrible football.
It's gonna be busy.
Hide in
You
my
guys are gonna be busy. So, well, thank you, Chief Jenkins, for suggesting these things. That would be really cool. Have you guys ever done a police facilities tour with the committee before?
I don't think with the committee. We
Okay.
just actually, we do an annual city open house, and so we just was it last week? They bring whoever wants to go on that tour to different facilities in the city, and the police department is one of the first ones that we take them through. So.
Okay, very cool.
I think I
Wow,
took
that's
the
amazing.
tour when I was about 12 or 11 or something. It was-
Probably was the same building.
Yeah, oh yeah, same building, but it's just, yeah, one of those city tours is cool.
And then we can mention to them at that point, if they want to sign up for a ride-along,
Yeah, there you go.
we can kind of plug that a little bit. I think it's important for community members to do that.
Is there,
I
is
did-
there a community volunteer kind of group or way for, I don't know, mainly I'm thinking of like kids to get involved or something, but
We've looked at starting an Explorer
yeah.
program, which is affiliated with Boy Scouts, but they don't have to be boys. We had someone one time that was interested in managing that, and they took another job somewhere else, so they don't work for us anymore, because it takes a lot of interest and staff time to keep those things operating. Right now, I don't have someone that I can really
Okay.
devote to that, but it definitely is a really good idea, and we'd love to do it at some point.
Well, one of the reasons I'm asking is because if we have a lot of people presenting on different aspects of the police department and the community, having somewhere to center it back to a theme of here's how you get involved, that'd be really helpful. And if it's something, here's how your family can be involved, here's how, something like that, but I don't know what we have.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some law enforcement agencies have, they're called different things, but essentially it's geared more for retirees that can volunteer to do things for the police department. And that's a really good way to get people in the community involved. And again, those types of programs take a lot of time to manage.
Yeah.
We just don't have the staff to do that at the moment.
Okay.
I was thinking we could have a community event where people come volunteer and then they go around town and they look for like stop signs that are like blocked by like leaves but man, the code people, they would really not like me.
Well, that would be,
They would just,
yeah, our public works people, yeah, that would all fall to
yeah,
them.
they would not like me, yeah. I would get a lot of grief for that idea.
You're making so much work for us.
We already, we're the team for that, right, guys? We can do that ourselves.
Does the police department still have the Citizens Police Academy thing?
We haven't done it for a while, and then actually a lot of these topics are falling on one thing that I'm going to talk about tonight is police staffing, and we again sorry to say the same thing, but on all these things it takes staff time to do it, and we're now having trouble just having enough people out on the street with the increase in population.
Because I know my husband and I did that several years ago. We went through that Citizens Police Academy and we both just loved it. And partly because of that was why I wanted to continue learning about police department, and that's why I came on this committee. But I hadn't heard anything about it for a long, long time and just wondered.
It's a great program. I totally
It
support it.
was wonderful, and the ride-alongs that we went on, and yeah. So okay, just wondered.
No, I want to do that. Okay. All right. Well then.
So it sounds like if you have a lot of time and you're willing to commit to something, could community members or kind of lead any of these types of things?
It would really need some of my staff
Mhm.
to spend some time doing it. I mean, community members could help, but I would need a staff person really to be the
Okay.
main point.
Now, one thing, when I did my ride-along, the officer that I went with gave me the tour after the ride-along. Is that typical?
Yeah, usually. Yep.
Chief, you mentioned the possibility of talking about weaponless defense, would that also be under the same category?
Well, we could group some on the same night, but it's completely separate from many of the other ones that I mentioned.
And do you, like, what kind of training or what kind of program have you had for that in the past?
Well, so our officers, we have a couple of defensive tactic instructors that annually, at least annually, our officers go through refresher training from what they learned in the academy into how to protect themselves and to engage with someone that's physically either assaulting them or resisting them. And so they have techniques and different ways of controlling someone that they teach our officers. So that would be something that they could teach. And they also on request will go to like bars that have bouncers and help train their staff on when to engage people, and if they do, how to engage them.
Okay, so we could have someone come in and talk to us. Okay.
I think it'd be really interesting too to have somebody come and talk to us about this parking issue. How many parking places we have downtown that are free, and how many, you know, I mean, just to get a real overview of what we're doing about this parking, especially with this new big building coming, and what we do about cars parked on the road overnight, that the bar patrons didn't think they could drive home and leave their car and then get a ticket.
Well, I'll just mention about that if they'll let you know that if someone does get a ticket because they left their car because they were too intoxicated to drive, that I will, if they request it, I will avoid those tickets. So that, because I want to encourage people to do that rather than to drive.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Do they have a certain time limit that they have
I
to
think
come
10
in?
days, right? It's 10 days.
Yeah, I think it's 10
Just
days
had one.
yeah.
That might be good information to publicize at the Lentil Festival.
It's on
Well, huh?
YouTube. It's on YouTube now.
Then you get them saying that they.
Yeah, that's kind of a two-edged sword.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want it to be that
Honest,
excuse
they
in
use-
somebody's head that when it might not actually be the.
Right.
Yes.
And not repeat it often.
Right, yeah.
And then going back to one of the other suggestions with the marijuana laws, you guys aren't dealing with that directly, you said, anymore, but you guys are looking into things for testing levels during, operating a vehicle.
Well, we're working with WSU researchers and the State Traffic Safety Commission on research that will help inform us on really what level there is impairment with marijuana. And really, we're in the real infant stages of that. And there's not been a lot of research specifically on that topic. And there's I thought we would be really well informed after this current research that we're doing, but there's just so many variables that have to be tested that there's a long way to go.
Okay, all right, well, maybe.
But I think, like Amy suggested, having somebody come in and talk about that research would be really interesting, for sure.
Yeah, and if you want to do it or suggest someone to us to come in and do it, that would be great.
Well, I do psychological research, which isn't quite as interesting, I think, for this whole general debate, but I think Brian would be, who's the person really working on actually getting something that would work in the field. I think that would probably be an interesting topic.
All right, great, that was very helpful, because now I have a lot of direction to get us going. I appreciate that very much, so, now we can go back to the Lentil Festival. So, do I hear any, suggestions or anything? I know that we don't have our trifold in front of us, but we can bring it to the next meeting.
Or visit it.
Yeah, it is July, the next meeting, so that's our last, let's see, what are the dates of the
So
Lentil
last-
Festival? again?
18th and 19th.
18th, 19th.
So we'd have an August meeting too.
Yeah, we should have an August meeting then before. So yeah, I guess we could just bring it to the next meeting and talk about the materials. But if you guys have any suggestions for materials that we can work on, we can do that. Yeah,
Well,
you were doing the,
I'm doing the sign, it's already, Darby just needs to let me know how big, and she's gonna give me the actual official logo, right? Or
Yeah, we can
email it
figure
to
out
me
what
so that
needs
they
that
can
one.
transpose it, yeah, so that's done.
Oh,
That'll
okay.
be done, yeah. Okay, so I wrote to Darby about this, or talked to her a while back about Amber Alert Day.
okay,
So those of you that don't know, at the Daily Grind, we did an Amber Alert Day where the police department was 100% involved. And people of any age could come in, but primarily for kids, where they did a DNA, and the police department had the kit that had the forms for the families to fill out. And then they did a cheek swab and had all of that. We didn't send it off anywhere, it just went back into the packet so that the parents would have that information. But we even had college students coming, which is a good age. It's not just the little ones that get missing sometimes. Well, the new owners of the Daily Grind stopped that program, and we did it for 4 years. It was very successful. And Mike Crow and Shane were both, Mike did it the first 3 years and Shane did it the last. But I'm wondering, because we didn't get it picked up, Dismore's was interested in maybe trying to do it there. But is that something that you think we could do at Lentil Festival? The equipment that was needed really was somebody that just sat with the kids to take the information, and then every child had a Polaroid picture taken, that the police department had provided the camera, and we took the picture and that went right into their packet. So when the parent left, it was pretty quick to go through, other than just filling out kind of the pertinent information. The parents could take it home and fill out the rest. But at least then every parent that hadn't done it now, so it hasn't been done for 3 years. So there's a whole new crop of younger kids coming up. And it seems like at Lentil Festival would be just a great opportunity if you don't think it would be too cumbersome. And I'm not, because I've never been at this booth at Lentil Festival before, I'm not sure exactly how much you have that engages the public, but we would still have time to announce or advertise that we're gonna do that at Lentil Festival. And there you go. I just know that Mike was able to get those packets from somebody, and we had volunteers. A couple of the ministers from town came in and did some volunteering to help the parents fill out the paperwork. But it was just that we wanted to get the information down, just their name and kind of some of that stuff to let the parents know it was important, their height and weight and all of those kind of pertinent things they could do when they got home. So, and you were there for the last one, weren't you, Gary?
Yeah, so the main time, I guess, issue on that is really the fingerprint part of it, because the rest of it, you can snap a picture and.
Yeah,
the
we
DNA
did the
swab pretty
fingerprints
quickly.
on them, and so that was, they went through a line, and,
I think it's possible to do it at Lentil Festival.
I just think it'd be great if we could do it. If we've got volunteers, and we can probably find more people that would be willing to help, but it would just be I just think it's such a valuable thing.
And we could train whoever's gonna work the booth how to take fingerprints.
Well, that'd be great.
yeah. Maybe we would make sure that we have 2 people at least at the booth.
Well, so what we had was the police were the fingerprint person, and the person that did the cheek swab, and the person that did the pictures. So if a civilian can do the fingerprints,
Well, all of you could.
we
you
could all do
of
everything,
that.
I guess. But, and then, so what do you do, because I haven't been, I don't know if everybody else has, what does the table typically do? Just answer questions and hand out
Yeah.
brochures and stuff?
We establish awareness of what the Police Advisory Committee is, and just letting you know that we're here, we're the liaison between the public and the community, between the police department and the communities for starting that conversation piece and getting conversation going about community concerns. So it's just, we give out the fingerprint little kits, and I think that do we still have some of those, or do we need to order more of those?
The child ID kits.
Yes. So we give those out where the parents can take the fingerprints of their own child and have that on for themselves. And then if they have questions about the police department, we try to be able to answer them. We talk to them. We bring ride-along forms. We bring things like that or let them know how to do those things and have that available. But we've never done anything where it's like directly, at least from what I know about the things we've done in the past, where we're directly doing something at the booth like an Amber Alert Day.
Sounds cool.
It was so cool. It really was. I mean, and wherever Mike got that packet, we just got the same one every year after that, but everything was in it. Are you familiar with?
The child ID kits?
Yeah.
Is it like a system where you have to set it up on a computer so it stores the photo with the right person's name?
No, they took the photo and gave it to the parent right away, so it was a Polaroid.
So they had the whole.
The parent, one of the things that we really had to stress with the parent is the police didn't keep any of the
Right.
information. Some of the parents, or especially the college-age kids, were a little hesitant about doing it. But in that kit was sort of the long swab for your cheek, and then they had a sterile packet you put that down in. And so one of the police officers did that day, and then we did the fingerprints, and they took the pictures, and we just put everything right back in the pack so the parents could see that we gave it all to them, and we didn't keep any information, so nothing computer-wise, because they didn't
Okay.
want us to have that. But then, at least the fingerprints and the swab are good forever.
Right.
Basically, so, and after the first year, oh my gosh, the first year they were lined up clear down the street waiting to get in with kids. We passed out information, which wouldn't be possible now, but the last 2 years we passed out information in the school system. So we put it in their little packets at school, and then the parents knew that it was coming, but it's just as easily attached to Lentil Festival ads that we're already going to be doing. And we get funding from, I can't say that. We have some funding maybe available if it would cost us any money. But basically this was free. And then we gave free ice cream to all the little kids that had their fingerprints taken, so that worked out. They really wanted to come for ice cream, but
We can do suckers.
yeah, every time they're finished, especially the little kids. But we really tried to focus on the grade school kids. But after it got started, older kids were coming in, especially college kids were coming in. So that would be, I'd be more than willing to work on that.
Well, we could make that happen, and we can make sure we have enough for the ID kits. If we need to get some, we'll get some, and make sure we have the set up for fingerprints, and then we can do photos that we can print out right there.
Does that feel okay to everybody? Like it wouldn't be too
I think it's
cumbersome
a
with what
great
you
idea.
already
I
do?
just think maybe we should pick, the police department does typically the event on Saturday. So we should advertise this as a Friday only part. Or would you want to do that on Saturday too?
Well, I can check with my staff that's doing that on Saturday, and we could probably offer it on both days.
Okay. And I know that, I would be glad to help on Saturday
Yeah, if
too.
you needed extra hands to facilitate that on Saturday,
Okay.
probably make that
All right.
So I can make myself available for both days, and great, Amy can be there with me too, and we'll have other people down
Only
there.
for 8
So
hours
I
or
love
my
the
dog
idea.
gets
I think
free.
it's great because
Thanks.
it's something that's going to pull other people in. It's not something they're used to seeing, so they're used to seeing us there, right next to the beer gardens. But so
Good, thank you.
in the beer garden.
So we called it Amber Alert Day, so I don't know if there's some other name you'd want to, if that is good enough that people really kind of understood what we were doing by that name, but
Yeah, let me look. There might actually be an official Amber Alert Day, so we
Oh.
don't want to step on that if
Oh,
we're
okay.
not doing it then.
awesome. We can readdress Lentil Festival again at the next meeting unless there's anything else ideas you guys have that you want to talk about. You guys are all anxious to get outside in the sunshine.
Not even that sunny today.
But Chief Jenkins, you also have on here police staffing, so we'd like to hear about that.
Sure. So attached to your agenda is a copy of the memo that I sent to the city supervisor earlier this year. And this was in conjunction with setting city council goals. Every year, the city council establishes goals for the year that they want to achieve, and department heads are asked to provide input and suggestions. And for the last, this is the third year that I've sent to council a suggestion to establish some type of a formula for the number of officers we should have on the police department. And so, you know, I don't expect you to sit down and read this right now, but I just go through some different ways to look at police staffing. One of the ways that I have in here is looking at a per capita rate, so officers per 1,000. And I compared our agency with other agencies that serve populations between 25 and 50,000 in the state of Washington. And we rank, it's like third lowest in the state for officer per 1,000 for agencies our size. So that gives you a little bit of idea of where we stand in comparison. And then I just talk about staffing levels and some of the impacts of having low staffing and some of my recommendations. And from what my recommended formula is, I think we're about 5 officers short right now. We have 29, I think we should have about 34. Anyway, this is something that we'll be talking with, that I'll be talking with the city supervisor soon as we prepare to do 2018 budget. And so I just wanted the committee to be aware of this issue. And after you've had a chance to look this over, feel free to either email me with any questions, or we can talk about it at the next meeting as well, after you've had time to look at this. I think it's something will need some attention very soon. In my mind, the farther behind we get, the harder it's going to be to catch back up. And once you start getting behind the crime curve, it's hard to get back in front of it. And I think we're right at a point now where we're kind of teetering on that edge. And I'll go over some of the annual report here in a few minutes as well, and you can see that. But it's just an issue that I think is really important, and that might be something that this committee might want to be active in.
Definitely.
How many officers does WSU have?
I think they had 20.
Do we count those not in your 29, but do we count those in who's doing law enforcement in this area?
Because we have, they're complete, in fact, there's a section that talks about that, but we essentially have completely separate jurisdictions and jurisdictional lines. And so we look at what we respond to and what we're responsible for, and separate out what they respond to, what they're responsible for.
And on the staffing issue, I had somebody come to me about coming here to get fingerprints done, and we're told that you didn't have enough staff to do them. But on your website, it needs to be noted, I think, because when they were looking for a place to go.
How long ago was that?
Last week.
Because we do have our days and hours posted. It was during those days and hours?
Yes. And when they got here, they were told that the best option was for them just to go to Colfax.
The only time that should happen is if somebody called in sick or something like that, and we didn't have staffing on that day. Otherwise, we should be able to provide that service on the dates and times.
So you are doing it?
That should, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we are just recently got back to full staffing in records. We just had 2 new records specialists graduate from their training, in-house training, and so all of our shifts are now completely staffed. So we should be, we shouldn't have any issues in that area.
It was a high school graduate that was getting fingerprints for a job as soon as graduation was over, so it was last week.
Is there a way you could find out when that happened, like the date and the approximate time? That would be helpful. Because
Can I
I'd like
do
to
it
follow
now?
up.
Can I just send a text? Do you care?
Yep, no.
Okay.
There was just that week or whatever
Question answered immediately.
that might have happened, because I think he was by himself.
Oh,
He was
okay.
covering for somebody.
Yeah, we had some people at training, and I think some people sick, and so we actually had Gary, our code enforcement officer, cover the front, and because we didn't have any records people on at certain times that could have been during that time, but let me follow up on it if you can get me the information.
Okay.
So, anyway, I just asked that you look this over, and then we can talk about it some more.
Okay, perfect, thank you. It looks like you have a pretty gradual expansion here until 2021. So adding 2 police officers in 2018. And are you projecting growth along with this?
Yeah, so
Estimated
I did project growth with some population projections through 2021. So that would actually, by 2021, I think we would need 2 more officers in addition to the 5 that we need right now.
We can all write letters to our council people in support of.
Well, and let me also just make clear that I don't think the council necessarily has been negligent. I mean, they have a really tough job in trying to balance the revenue that they have accessible. And so some of it is definitely a revenue issue, and where's the revenue going to come from? I just don't want anybody to think that that I'm saying that the council doesn't care about this issue, because I think they do.
Yeah, definitely.
How many officers at 10 o'clock at night say are actually out?
It depends on the time of the year. So our swing shift and graveyard shifts overlap. So so on Friday night is a day that all of our officers really are scheduled to work on that day. So if nobody is at training, nobody called in sick, and nobody's on vacation, on a day shift and a swing shift, or swing shift and graveyard shift, when they overlap between 10 and midnight, we could have 12, 13 officers working at a time.
How many cars do we have?
We have 7 cars. So
One right
they'll
on
have
the
to
hood?
double up.
So go to the door.
And our College Hill officer is a lot of times on foot.
Oh, okay.
And then after midnight, then it drops back down to, however many might be working that night. And, there's some days we have 2 officers working.
Do we have enough vehicles?
We just added 1 more vehicle this year. And that's something we would have to add as we added more officers.
It was last Wednesday at 2 o'clock.
Okay. I'll follow up on that.
All right, I think we should put this, make sure we readdress this again on the next agenda. Darby, if you can make sure that's on there.
Yeah, it'd be nice if you have updates, to see how they respond. Have you heard anything back from?
Well,
'Cause this
no, I
was
mean, the
January,
council
right?
already picked their goals for the year, and this staffing wasn't on the list.
And so do those costs include what would, adding an extra vehicle, or,
And so where are you looking?
like, as we add 2 officers, if we were to add, under the
No,
recommendations?
these are all salary and benefit costs.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, let's bring that back up again, because I know we're gonna have questions on that piece. So, Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, and then Chief Jenkins, so the annual report.
Right, so at last council meeting, I presented to the city council the annual report, and you should have one of these. And I'll just go, yeah, if you don't have one, Darby can get you one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
So I'll just go through and hit a few of the highlights, and then you're welcome to take this and read it later if you'd like. So starting on page 4, there's a comparison. The table at the very top of the page is a comparison between Pullman and the state as far as changes between 2015 and 2016. So you'll see the row where it says total crimes. We had a change of 56% increase, and the state had a 16% increase. And then the crime rate, which is the crime per thousand population, we had a 54% increase, and the state had a 9% decrease. So that just provides a little bit of comparison with the state. And then the line chart below that shows the same, essentially the same information, just in a chart form. And so green is Pullman from 2007 till 2016, and then the orange is the state. Page 5, and we'll go over in a little bit more detail what Group A offenses are, but the way that crime is reported now in what's the National Incident-Based Reporting System, so NIBRS, they have what are called Group A offenses, and they divide those between property, persons, and society crimes. So at the top of page 5, you'll see a line chart that shows those divided by those 3 crimes. So you can see that, you know, our society crimes are relatively low and fairly stable. Persons crimes, there's a little bit of fluctuation there, but our biggest fluctuation you can see is in property crimes. The big increase in 2011 was the year that we had a compromise at a local business with credit card processing, and so we had a lot of fraud cases that year as a result of that. So that is really what caused that increase that year. And then the bottom bar chart is the same information, just shown differently, and you can see what makes up all of our total crime and how it's divided. So then on the next page, on page 6, there's some more detail on what those offenses are. So all the Group A offenses, the top section there are person, what is counted as persons offenses, and then the middle section is property, and the bottom section is society. So just a few that I'll point out as far as changes that we saw from 2015 to 2016. And the top persons under forcible sex offenses, there was an 81% increase. Those numbers are still relatively low, so anytime there's some change there, it's going to look like a big increase, but we did have a fairly significant increase from one year to the next. So our overall Group A persons increases was 7% from one year to the next. Under property, our biggest increases were in larceny. You can see it went from 251 to 446. Vandalism more than doubled. And fraud cases, there's a huge increase there, and that's mainly because 2015 we had a really low number that year. So need to, instead of just looking from one year to the next, it's better to kind of look across that whole row and see where we're at over time. But in Group A property from 2015 to 2016, we had a 92% increase. Society crimes, it was a 17% decrease. So overall, again, our numbers were, we had a 56% increase in total Group A offenses. Down the next page, on page 7, in the top section, I just list our top 12 calls for service. So you'll see the total calls for service in that row. We had a increase of about 333 calls from 2015 to 16. Airport security, by the way, the top call there, airports are required to provide law enforcement services at the airport, and the larger airports have their own police department. So if you go to Spokane or SeaTac, they have their own police department at the airport. The Pullman Police Department provides law enforcement services for the Pullman-Moscow Regional Airport. So our officers are there about 75%, 80% of the time there's a departing flight to be the law enforcement presence for those flights. And so we did that over 1,000 flights in 2016. The big increases that we saw this last year, traffic collisions are up 13%, parking problems are up 13%, welfare checks are up 32%, and if you look back to 2010, welfare checks are actually up 97%, parking problems 49%, and traffic collisions 31%. And these are the types of things that we see. For example, welfare checks and the civil calls and those types of things are somewhat reflective in the mental health issue that's evolving in the state, and I know the school district definitely sees those issues themselves. And so those even though they won't show up on this other chart on page 6 with crimes, these are the types of calls that really take up a significant amount of staff time to deal with. The rest, yeah.
I'm just not sure what welfare checks mean.
You know, they're really varied. They can range from somebody's concerned that a friend of theirs who maybe has been depressed isn't answering their phone and they need us to go check on them, and then that turns into maybe a mental health issue that we're dealing with, or somebody's threatened suicide and they want us to go check on them. So there's just a lot of different issues. And the rest of that page is just some stats to give you an idea of the type of things that our officers are doing. I'll note that under parking enforcement, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but you can see the second and third line down under parking enforcement, it shows overtime downtown infractions and overtime downtown warnings. A few years ago, we went to a system where on downtown overtime parking, if the vehicle had not received a ticket within the past 2 years, then we'd consider them a first-time offender and they would get a warning. And then after that, then they would receive an infraction. So it was just it was a way to, you know, someone from out of town or new to town that wasn't aware of the downtown restrictions would get some type of a warning before they just got hit with the ticket. Next page, on page 8, highlighted are the American Legion Officer of the Year, Officer Alex Gordon received that award. Next section talks about some of the grants. We didn't have any big grants in 2016. We got about $18,000, a little bit over that, in reimbursements from various grants. And then at the bottom of page 9, you see a commissioned officer staffing, and it shows per capita ratio. And there's a similar table that is in that staffing report that you have as well. And when I presented this to City Council, I spent a little bit of time on this topic talking about staffing. And I talked, again, about beyond just the crime numbers that they see. We're seeing in the summer that our calls from 2001, so in 2001 is the last time we had any significant staff increase at the police department. 3 officers were added in 2001. Since that time, we've added 1 officer. So that's about a 3.5% increase with a population increase of about 33%. So in 2001, if you compare 2016 to 2001, our summer calls are up about 34%, but pretty much matches the population increase that we've seen, which was 33%. Our traffic collisions are up 24% during that time. So welfare checks, back to talking about those types of issues, are up 259%. Civil calls are up 393%, and protective custody cases, which also relate to mental health issues, are up 840%. So those are some of the things that we're dealing with staffing-wise, with the same number of staff, but and having these increases in the need or the staff time needed to address these issues.
Can I ask something related to that? You talked about the need for police at the airport and that Pullman provides that. And as the airport expands, we will have more flights, there will be more need. Is there any thought that Moscow Police or anybody else or the airport itself is going to contribute to that policing function?
Yeah, I think it's a discussion we'll need to have. Since it's in Washington and in the city limits of Pullman, Moscow involvement probably would not be likely, but there is a program where TSA will provide reimbursement for providing service there. There are a lot of strings attached to that, and I've looked at that program a couple of times since I've been here, and right now it would actually cost us more money to staff those positions through TSA than it would to meet the requirements. Then it's actually costing us in staff time now. But as the airport expands, that would be something we could look to see if we do reach a point where that would be cost effective for us.
Thank you.
Next page, on page 10, in the middle of that page, it talks about the increase that we've seen in public records requests. So that's another area that's highlighted in the staffing report. So over the past 3 years, we've seen over a 200% increase in public records requests made to our records section. We've addressed some of that through reorganizing our records section. It used to be that we had record specialist ones who essentially worked the front counter. They worked all the shifts and helped the public at the front counter, transcribed police reports and processed reports and other paperwork. And then we had 2 specialists that were record specialist 2s who worked a lot on public records requests. Well, as we started seeing this big increase in public records requests, we made a change and essentially combined them all into public records specialists without a differentiation. And we're now starting to train all of those public record specialist ones in how to deal with public records requests. Washington law is very complicated in public records. There's a lot to know and a lot to learn to do it correctly, and so it's going to take a little bit of time for all of our staff to get up to speed, but we're slowly moving forward with that and passing along some of the responsibility amongst all the record specialists, so that should help address some of this in some part, but I think we'll also need at some point to look at staffing there too as well.
What's driving all those requests? Is it, you nail it down?
You know, I'm not really sure. Some of it is somewhat self-inflicted in that we've added body-worn cameras, and so that's added to some staff time. But that doesn't. I don't think that really completely addresses the number of public records requests that we're seeing.
Is it people, my question would be, is it people that are looking for data that are trying to, and is there a nationwide trend where we're just part of this larger?
I think there is a nationwide trend in public records requests, and I think also it depends on the state. So when I worked in California, their public records laws were a little simpler, and there was a lot more discretion on law enforcement agencies on what they could or what they had to release versus what they didn't have to. Washington, it's a very open state as far as public records goes. There's a lot more transparency in the state, and so we're required to provide a lot more information. So I think it just seems there's a lot more awareness about the ability to make public records requests. And a lot of them are just your regular everyday, I need a copy of my traffic accident report, my insurance company needs a copy of the crime report, you know, those types of things. And those will continue. But we do get a lot of, because we have a university in town, we get a lot of requests to help with research. And so those are made through public records. Even the Student Conduct Board has to make their request through the public records process to get information involving a Pullman case for their Student Conduct Board. So there's a lot of things that really play into that. Page 11, our DARE and School Resource Officer information. We've gone to having separate DARE graduations at each school to one graduation that includes all the schools, and this is a photo from the graduation from last year. Just, unless you have any questions, I'm going to skip a few pages here to page 16. And there in the middle, we talk about our social media and our website. Our Facebook likes increased 70% in 2016. We talked about our live streaming on Facebook. And our Twitter account is increased 36%. The MyPD app, and then on the next page, on page 17, the Nextdoor program, online program that's geographically based, and then TrackMall, which is a property lost and recovery system. And Darby has been doing a great job with our social media presence. She really promotes those pages, and that's why they do so well. And in fact, our new city supervisor wants the city Facebook page to be more relevant and active, and so Darby's actually also doing that for the city. And then page 19 starts the report on the Police Advisory Committee. And so that just highlights the committee and some of the things that the committee did last year, including the Lentil Festival. Under volunteers, reserve police officers on the bottom of page 20, as I mentioned just prior to the meeting, we're down to one reserve officer. We had 3, and then 2 of them have left for one reason or another. But Reserve Officer Dennis Pratt volunteered almost 800 hours last year. And he does a great job.
Is he a retired officer?
He's not, I don't know if you'd call it retired. He doesn't need to work.
Okay.
So he does things here and there, and
Yeah.
he actually, we offered him a full-time police officer job a couple of years ago, and he didn't want to work full-time.
Oh, okay.
Although he practically is, but
I have to meet
he wants
him.
to be able
I
to
haven't met him,
choose.
so it's like, there's just a couple officers that I haven't
Yeah,
met yet.
he's
so.
quite an asset for us.
He's usually around at Lentil Fest, isn't he?
He usually does work the Lentil Festival,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I've seen him there both last 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the annual report, I showed the council a program called crimereports.com, and it's an online mapping system of crime. And they saw a short video from the crimereports.com webpage that showed, or actually it's also on YouTube, that showed a little bit of their system. And I think we're probably going to be going up and running on that within the next month or 2. And what happens is we export all of our crime data out of our CAD system, and then it's imported into this mapping system, and it will map crimes on like a Google map. And the public can look at that, and it goes back as far as 6 months, so it only should have a 6-month time period there. So the public can filter what they're looking at by either crime or time period, and so it's pretty customizable for how the public can look at that. And so I would look for that in the next coming month or 2. And if you want to see what it looks like, you can go to crimereports.com, and you can look on there and find cities that are already doing it, and look and see what the data looks like in their city. So that's my report on the annual report, and so I know that's a lot all at once, so if you want to take a look at this, and we can talk about it next time if you have any questions about it.
Where can the public access these?
This is on our website under,
I think it's under news and statistics.
News and
Under
statistics.
news and statistics.
And then annual report, we have all of
Okay,
them listed
copy.
back to probably 2010.
Okay, perfect.
Well, I want to compliment this memo on staffing is a first-rate argument, and this thing is very professional.
So Darby designed this whole report.
Did you get a raise from this, Darby?
I'm sure it's coming soon.
Yes, sir.
Is that in the?
Thanks for bringing that up.
How effective the staffing memo is, yeah.
Oh, you know, before I leave this, we had talked before about what we wanted, how we wanted to film our meetings. And so currently, we're recording and then posting it on YouTube. And this committee hosted a couple of meetings, the proposed ATV ordinance and the drone policy, correct? And both of those were streamed live on Facebook, which are then available on Facebook for anyone to see. So I just wanted to kind of bring this topic back up, and maybe the committee might want to revisit how we want to record these meetings, or whether we want to continue to just record them and then post them later on YouTube, or whether we want to stream them live on Facebook.
I would be open to doing live. So when you post them on Facebook, are they also available on YouTube, or?
You know, we haven't, do you know, Darby? I suspect, and maybe Rob would know when we're done with the meeting, but there might be a way to take that video that's on YouTube, that's on Facebook after the meeting's done, and save it in a format that we could upload to YouTube.
There is a way to save it.
Okay.
Yep. Have you guys created a policy for how long you leave videos out, or do you make them public for infinitely?
We haven't taken anything off of YouTube.
Okay. So,
One thing to keep in mind is if there's parts of our meetings that
right.
we aren't supposed to be showing, the live thing is a little bit.
How do
Right.
you pause it?
Right. Well.
I mean, maybe you can just pause the live, I don't know.
Right. And we have talked about not asking people to step out anymore either, and having that as an option and letting people be there for their critique. I don't know if the committee would be comfortable voting on somebody, sitting right in front of you, like, I really want to be on this committee, but we really don't want you, no.
Well, the reality is it's going to be on YouTube later anyway, at least the way that we're doing it now.
Well, I actually can pause it. If I hold something up, he will pause.
Okay.
He pauses
That's
the
right.
video,
Yep.
and then if I hold it up again, he'll replay it, and then.
So now there's
We
going to
could-
be an option in this video.
Well, he won't. I'm sure he'll know not to do it this time. He's like Korey
Probably do
just
the same
feels
thing.
like raising that
We
for
We
some
can't
reason.
pause it, but we
Okay.
could stop it and then
And
start
restart
it
it.
again.
But then it would be on a different.
It'd be two separate clips. Yeah.
Okay. That would be, that might.
But we could also decide to do things like that when we're hosting specific, like let's say we don't have somebody that we're going to be adding to the committee. If we're hosting like the fraternity sorority day, we could say this one will be live and ahead of time and do those live, because I think it'd be really valuable. I've been watching those videos on Facebook and sharing them, and I think it's extremely valuable what you
Or
guys
you
have been doing.
could also do that part at the end. We could
That's what
end
I
the
would
live
suggest
video
is
and
if
then
you have closed
do it at
discussion,
the end.
Yeah.
move it to the end.
Right.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
probably
And
good.
stop the recording, have your closed discussion,
Right.
then adjourn.
Yeah.
Right, if we have
Sure.
anything
I think
on that
that's
day.
probably a good way to handle it, because, then you got your live part, and then you handle other business.
And that's what commissions that are governed by the public, or the
Yeah.
Open Meeting Act do.
Yep.
They recess and go to executive session.
Yeah.
We do that, yeah. So what we could do is we could add another column here under public comment and say closed period, where we can have any discussion or add someone to the committee. We could add them in at the end. That way, but then, you know, it's so fun to make them awkwardly come up here, right? Like right after they're nominated, isn't it, Amy?
It is a rite of passage.
It's a rite of, like,
Isn't hazing illegal?
all right, you're on the committee, come up here and sit here during this first meeting. I remember how awkward that was. I was like, can't I just sit back here for this?
I think it's important to use one media, either YouTube or Facebook, though, just if we're gonna have an audience,
Yeah.
only go to one place. Seems like that way.
Yeah, I mean, we can look at our current viewers, what we get on YouTube.
Which, yeah, the chief.
The last couple I looked at, they were like, we got 50 views on those. And I know when we had our, do you remember how many views we had when we had our meetings that we live streamed?
No.
But I think there were over 100 that ultimately viewed it, not necessarily live, but
Mm-hmm.
saw it at some point. But it was a little bit different because there were, those special meetings for a particular topic as well.
So one question though, as far as Facebook versus YouTube. YouTube, of course, it's there. If you go to you can find it pretty easily. Facebook doesn't sort of just keep going online and sort of fade out, or not?
Well, you could click on our videos
Oh, okay.
and they
And then
all
get
show
that,
up there.
okay.
But if we did do the live streaming on Facebook, I would suggest that we also keep it and post it to YouTube so everyone can see the fun.
Okay.
I agree, because it would exclude a population who doesn't have Facebook.
Yeah, right.
And it would exclude people who don't necessarily even know how to navigate Facebook. Like, I didn't even realize you could click on video, and I'm scrolling all the way down trying to find this video. Like, I could have just
And
gone
it's
on
not just
YouTube. What?
And it's not just playing.
Oh, yeah, well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, we had at one point discussed maybe having our videos expire at some point, but I don't even see that as necessary unless anyone else sees it as necessary. The only thing I miss about not recording is having these windows open, but, you know, that's okay.
Sacrifice.
That's why I'm super anxious to get the next
So-
meeting in this week.
If you did Facebook, you would, because live meetings you filmed off phone or something, or?
Yeah.
Okay, so you do that instead of using this then? Is that right? Okay. Okay.
Oh, it's when you set up your tripod with your phone and you do it that way. Okay.
That's how you live stream, I guess.
I don't know.
Mhm.
You know, I should know these things. I'm a millennial, but I guess just out of the loop. But I think it would be extremely valuable to post them on Facebook and do a live the way you guys have been, just because I find it so useful to go there and click on, and if someone has a question, I know exactly how to get them there. I can just tag them and, you know,
You
So-
might already be connected to you
yeah.
through Facebook.
So is this
Yeah, it might be hard, yeah.
something we want to address this time or next time? Because we probably need to vote on that, right?
Yeah, we do need to vote on it. We would need to vote to change this, yeah.
What, does anyone else?
Do we have any further discussion, or are we comfortable voting on this now?
I motion to table it, just to prolong the decision, because I'm not determined yet.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No matter what the motion is, it always carries.
I mean, I was gonna be opposed, but you know. I didn't wanna rock the vote. So let's put that on the next month's agenda, and then hopefully we can make a decision. I mean,
Yeah, think about that.
since we're gonna be doing our tours, we wouldn't wanna record that one anyway, so we won't miss out on anything, but, so for the next month, let's see, if we do our police tour, wait, let's do our tour at the end, so the recorded part when we're talking about our Lentil Festival stuff, and we might be scheduling an interview for somebody who applied for a vacancy, maybe, so maybe, it could happen, maybe we'll have someone in here.
One last rite of passage.
Yeah, yeah.
Or stuff.
So, yeah. Okay, and then, all right, well, let's move on back to Chief Jenkins for our police department update.
Jeez. I can't talk anymore. All right, I have 10 minutes. So our drone program is moving forward. We held 3 public meetings. We have an officer who is already a licensed pilot, and so there's an abbreviated process to be certified as a drone pilot for licensed pilots, and so he's already done that process, and so he's licensed. We're going to be meeting on June 27th with Professor Matt Taylor and our drone team to talk about what we want to purchase. And then after that meeting, we will probably be making a purchase. After we receive the drone, we will be applying to the FAA for a jurisdictional certificate of authorization. And we have to have our drone before we can apply for that. That's why we're doing it in that order. And then that, once we receive that authorization from the FAA, then we can, from then on out, certify our own pilots to fly the drone. So we'll have our licensed pilot will be our head trainer for that. And then we're still working on finalizing our policy. Our city attorney is looking at that right now. So hopefully within the next couple of months, we should have it up and running.
What's the intent of the drone program? Is it to police with drones?
So we're not going to do any general surveillance. It'll all be mission driven. So SWAT deployment, flooding, reconnaissance, search and rescue, assisting the fire department. So just specific missions, not just to be patrolling. The ATV ordinance that we held a public meeting on is also moving forward. That requires an environmental impact review. So I completed the required checklist for that, which was reviewed by Public Works and Planning. That's now out for public review, and public input is due back on that by June 27th. And depending on what feedback is received from the public, there may be a requirement to hold a public hearing on the environmental impact, or we may be able to just take it directly back to council without a hearing. So it just depends on what the public says about it. All of our sworn staff were given hearing tests over the last few months. The week of May 8th, one of our sergeants is a police bicycle instructor, and so we hosted bike training. And so all of our officers that had not yet been trained, and then some from Moscow PD were trained. All of our sworn staff are all bike officer trained, and it's about I think it's a week-long or 4-day or week-long class that's fairly intensive, and they get just short of landing in the hospital usually after the training. But they're riding down steps and all kinds of things. The week of May 22nd, I went to the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs Conference, which was in Spokane. From May 22nd up through June 15th, we're working with the researchers on the THC research project, and we're doing field sobriety tests on volunteers who have taken doses of THC, and then they're taking blood samples from them, and so we'll be able to compare the results of the field sobriety tests with the levels of THC that are in the person's system. And they're using volunteers that are both chronic users and inexperienced users, and looking at the differences between what the impacts are on both of those populations. So very interesting research. And the State Traffic Safety Commission is funding overtime for officers to do that. June 6th council meeting, I presented the annual report, and also at that meeting the council passed a resolution, a welcoming city resolution. It was discussed at a previous council meeting. There had been a section in there that mentioned the police and talked about, essentially said that the police would not cooperate with federal authorities on immigration issues with some exceptions. And it was my opinion that the wording in that particular section was ambiguous enough that no matter what we did, we could be seen as doing it wrong, and it was, so it would not put us in a very good position. The city attorney agreed, so they removed any mention of police in the welcoming city resolution and then passed it without that part in it. I don't have the final version. I suspect it's probably posted online and under the city's website under city council. And they had in their agenda for that meeting, that was the version that was passed, and June 6th meeting. June 8th was the city tour that I talked about, and we provided a tour of the police facility that morning. Coming up, next week I'll be doing 2 presentations at the Taser Axon Conference in Arizona. Dr. David Macon from Washington State University, who's done a lot of research with us on body-worn cameras. He and I are going to do a presentation talking about body-worn cameras and the research being done on use of force by law enforcement. And then I'll be doing another presentation with some people from Taser Axon talking about cloud storage of digital evidence versus on-premise storage. And then since I'm doing some presentations, my tuition is free there, so I can attend all other sessions for nothing. Some follow-up from the constituency poll last meeting. It was reported that there's problems turning from westbound Olson to southbound Grand, and from southbound Grand to eastbound Olson due to traffic. And there was a request for left turn signals to be added. So I forwarded that to our Public Works and Engineering, and they feel that having dedicated turn signals there would add to the congestion that already exists on Grand Avenue. And so they would be opposed to adding turn signals there. And then another report of a trail sign down on the jogging path near Copple Farms, and the graffiti that was on the playfield restrooms by the flagpole was still legible, and so I reported that to the park superintendent, and he told me they put it on their list to take care of, and I don't know if it's been taken care of yet, but they put it on their list. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Any questions, anybody?
I want to encourage a friendly reminder about the walking signal and that you can go when it's flashing red. I've noticed a few times when it's flashing red, which you can technically go, but it's stopped. So maybe just a friendly reminder that, hey, that video was really good. It was helpful.
Oh, and the video, unfortunately, the video that they have for that signal, they have the car actually running the red light.
Which is the only thing anyone noticed from the entire video. So.
I didn't notice that part.
Yeah.
Like, perfect.
But something to remind people that, just with the...
You people are real dumb around that line.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, so the solid red is you just like a traffic
Yeah, yep.
signal is you stay stopped, then when it goes to flashing red, then it's like a stop sign and you can go when it's clear.
Seems simple to me.
you think, right?
Since we are short on time, why don't we go around with our poll and just say if you have anything in your neighborhood or in your area pretty quickly, or maybe if you don't have anything, you don't have to say anything. Why don't you let us know if you do have something, since we only have 3 minutes.
Well, I have a son with significant disabilities, and I asked about welfare check. He was being imposed on by somebody recently in a very serious matter, and the police department took care of it very well, and I want to compliment Officer Emerson. It really helped us out.
Great, good to hear. Thank you.
That's great. Any other areas?
I think on Military Hill, the only thing is I don't know if it's continued, we haven't heard about it, I guess, in a week or so, but the car prowls that were happening, I know they're all unlocked cars, and I'm not sure why anyone isn't locking their vehicle at this point, but I've heard a couple of things about it from people in the area.
I keep mine unlocked just because I have a camera out there and I don't want to catch whoever.
So you're baiting them. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. Bait and switch. Anybody else? Justin, Charlene, anybody?
Nothing.
Anybody? Nothing? No? Nothing going on anywhere? It's important?
Except construction.
Oh, yes, construction. My time from getting from my house on Sunnyside Hill to Moscow has doubled to get there, because there's construction in Moscow and there's construction in Pullman, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I just went right through the cones in the parking lot. I hope that was okay.
I couldn't figure out how to get into the parking garage here.
Yeah, I just went right through the cones and just parked in there anyway. But
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm out there. I'm going to complain to the chief if I get that.
I'm gonna run back to my office.
All right, well then, hearing nothing else, I want to get you guys out of here on time today, so,
Even early.
yeah, like, we don't even need to motion to
Quick.
adjourn because we're,
Quick.
it's 7 o'clock. So, thank you guys for coming, and we'll see you at the next meeting. Prepare to wear some shoes for walking, no stilettos. We're gonna hopefully do